Let's see, we got chat fired up. We've got us on air right now. So, welcome to Live Before Lock, a very special Saturday edition, 90 minutes, because we have an 11 game slate here. I am joined by one fast Eddie Fear. You guys already got to see me this morning with one Adam Ship My Money Share labeled as fast Eddie Fear.
Yeah, I saw that. Was that just wish fulfillment for him? Was it like a Make-A-Wish thing? Was he like, I've been sick and maybe it's worse than I heard, and he was like, if I could have anything, it would be to be Eddie for a day. Is that what happened there?
We're going to play it off like that. I think you and I both wish we were him. He's down in Miami right now. But he forgot to rebook his flight. He intended on leaving Sunday, but got notification that his flight was leaving in 30 minutes this morning. So he had to buy another flight. So
wait,
DFS,
what happened?
Well, he was down there. He got weather up here in the DC area, had him stay an extra day, and then he got sick. So he pushed it back, and then he realized that by doing the show and the article and all that, he'd need to leave on Sunday. So he planned on that. He said he's been at Airbnbs, multiple hotels. He just keeps hopscotching around. And he forgot to rebook his plane after getting himself a new hotel. So he's paying full price to fly out tomorrow.
Oh, that's good. Make sure we bug Tom or something. We should send him an extra box of Girl Scout cookies or something.
Yes. And considering how Adam took down a couple of those DraftKings tournaments right before we left for a break, he's doing just fine.
You should be okay.
All right, we're going to go game by game here. There's a plethora of news, but we're going to talk about each thing as we get to the specific game. We'll start off, and some of the games we're going to go quickly through because we want to have questions at the end. But starting off, we're going to go to Indiana and Washington. We did receive news that Bobby Portis will be starting now for Thomas Bryant. Adam and I have talked on the podcast and previous shows that we're, as Wizards fans, we're a little more engaged in watching the team, but there's a lot of redundancy between Portis and Parker and Green. And
Miles Turner's out.
Yes, and well, I haven't gotten to that side yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Do your thing. Just figured I'd get that out there for you.
And Bryant and now you made me lose track. But there's 5 of them now. Oh, Ariza. So we like the theory of play in that pool. I'm happy to play any of them. Bryant, when he was starting, was a little bit different. Now, coming off the bench, it's okay, but he has the least chance at minutes. Green, the next less. Parker, kind of the next less. But any 2 of those 5 can go off. So if you're doing Fantasy Cruncher and Mass Multi-Entry, the recommendation is, as you're sprinkling them in, to not get overweighted or 3 or 4 of them even on the same team. Now, the prices have come up from their first few games. But that's a good way to set a rule or a group.
For Wizards?
For Wizards.
I wouldn't want more than 1.
Okay.
If we're going to start here, I'm against the Pacers. That's not a wonderful spot. This team obviously also playing on a back-to-back. Lots of guys with ridiculously heavy minutes last night. I can see playing 2, but that for me would be the exception. I really don't want more than 1 of these guys.
And this is more of a cap at 2. Not saying to play 2, but don't give me more than 2.
Yeah, I like having.
You would go no more.
If I build 150 lineups, I would probably have 5 or less with 2. Maybe of the remaining 145 split somewhere evenly between 1 and 0. I don't feel the need to play a Wizard here. It is a legitimately bad matchup. They have been, spanked in the past by the Pacers. They've had some pretty unappealing fantasy matchups. Beal as your best guy has like 45 and 45 and 25 in one of the games they got destroyed in the 3 games there. Like, I like Portis. The upside is there. I don't think the ownership should be especially out of control. That makes some sense for me. The price is way up on Parker. I like Bryant more now than I would have if he retained his starting role. Maybe they end up going big, but having Miles Turner out makes that less likely to me. So I like Jeff Green at his price. He should still get his 32 minutes or something at 5K. That's fine if you want to take a Wizard, but the matchup's bad. There's a lot of games on this slate with great matchups, so none of them are that cheap. So I got to be, even if I'm not playing Beal, everyone else is in that 5 to 6K range. It doesn't strike me as the best way to start playing 2. I know you guys are both big Washington guys, but playing 2 5, 6K guys in a legit bad matchup and hoping that you correctly get the best 2 guys and they hit some sort of super ceiling you're asking for a lot of things to go your way there, and they're just not cheap enough. Like if they were reduced more for the matchup, sure, but like Ariza is 7K and 6K. That's fairly priced or a little bit disadvantageously, and he's a player I like and have followed from team to team to team this year. So yeah, since we're starting with the Wizards, I would generally want to play 0 or 1, and would probably rank my order of preference Portis, Green, Beal. Like I love Bradley Beal as a player. I got a lot of pushback yesterday for me saying I would rather play DeRozan, which I still think worked out better points per dollar. The Beal was obviously a massive, and Wiggins, who ended up with only 35, though I still think that the analysis of no town to play Wiggins wasn't a very complicated one. I think that's right, but I said that I think with Satoransky back, he goes from averaging what I would think would be 9.5, 10 assists to getting 6 or 7 instead. He got 7. I thought he would play 39 minutes. He played 42. I thought he'd take 20 shots. He took 25, and he made 16 of them. So it's 64% from the field. All those numbers are probably going to come down, and the matchup is worse, and it's back end of a back-to-back. Like, Beal feels a little chasey. Like, yeah, he's a guy who's just running his damn team and can obviously go out there and put up a number. But, I project him for about 46. That's not terribly appealing for me at mid-9s.
All right. Absolutely fair there. Now, we do know that Turner is out. We have a minimum priced, I'll let you say it, cock chalk. Oh, I said it first. But we have Kyle O'Quinn. We have Domantas Sabonis, both in fine spots here against a Wizards team that is over their last 15 games. So I did my sample size of 5 weeks instead of last 30 days because we had the All-Star break in there, just because I wanted a representative size there, which is kind of usually what the number of teams or games that we get per team in the 30-day stretch. So the Wizards are the 6th fastest team, and I think they are the 4th worst team on defense. A little bit slower pace here, of course, for the Pacers, and they've been playing reasonably good defense here, but you got to love their bigs going against the Wizards, who have been allowing amongst the top 3 or top 5 for the entire season, opposing centers and bigs rebounding rates. So we like those guys. Were you satisfied with Kyle O'Quinn last night in his approximately 20 minutes?
Yeah, he did. I said I project him for 21 minutes and 27 fantasy points. So I missed by like 1 and 1, but that was exactly what I expected. People are like, he's going to start and play 30. I'm like, no, that's not going to. So that went exactly how I expected. I think looking at the matchup tonight is obviously a slightly superior one. Projection would remain fairly similar, about in that range, and he makes a ton of sense as a play. Again, we're waiting on a lot of news as to what's going to happen with some of the other fellas here. That's going to change the big value around a lot. Valanciunas is in. That just hit seconds ago.
Yep.
So that makes things interesting for Rob and Noah and the remainder of guys on that team we are talking about. But still waiting on Towns news. So I don't know if we get that in time, but starting to clear up the value bigs picture here. And we'll go back we'll try to burn through the games if possible. Yep. Then I'm going to put the rankings in because I wanted to get some of this news and I figured we'd get it before I put the ranks in. A lot of people have taking my rankings and either for cash, just pulling out the A's and extrapolating those into a variety of cash lineups, or for tournaments, taking the A's and extrapolating. I had a couple people do that last night. Somebody won $5,000 doing that. Like 4 people said, hey, that worked really well. So I try to wait, as long as possible and get it in there at least an hour or so before lock. But when we're on the air, even I delay a little bit intentionally because I don't know if there's any more than a dozen people doing that, but I want them to be able to make an adjustment or two and not 14 of 17 pieces of news break between now and lock. So I'm intentionally holding back the stick on that a little bit.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fair because we started early tonight. But reminder, Eddie's rankings are behind the paywall along with Alex's grade. We have projections for all of the major sports. We've got a ton of golf content. We are embracing the one-day golf games there on DraftKings and FanDuel. I'm just waiting for a back nine contest, and then my life will be complete. Back nine on the final day, Eddie. That sounds like fun. Perhaps we can go hole by hole at some point. But
sounding very perverted, by the way.
Yes. I realized that, and that was not where I was intending to go.
Going into the back nine and looking at all the holes, and like, all right, do your thing.
The 19th hole is where we are going to focus. But in any event, Eddie, We have a promo code for 50% off any 1 month subscription. That is live before lock, all one word. You pick any subscription there. That is a 1 month package. This code will not work on anything other than the 1 month packages, but you will get 50% off at checkout. There'll be a little promo code box. Type in live before lock, all one word, and that will be your reduced price of 50% off when you get to checkout. Next game we have here, Eddie, we've got the Lakers. We've got New Orleans. We know that Anthony Davis and Eton Moore are both out. We have a 233 over under for this one.
One more second, if you don't mind, on the Pacers real quick. I still don't hate Bojan in this spot, and certainly is sort of a reasonable cash play. He was in foul trouble last night, so he only played 25 minutes. I think you can see that possibly, that will come up, and he's not an unreasonable choice to run out there a bit more casually. Wesley Matthews makes some sense on FanDuel. Now there's a bevy of pretty good shooting guard plays, and I kind of like paying up at that position a little more. But if you're punting down at shooting guard, $4,200 Wesley Matthews is just fine on FanDuel, and it's a pretty good spot for him. I'm projected for about 30, so that's a pretty good number for Wesley Matthews. So especially on FanDuel, 4,200, that makes sense. You can certainly still Collison, and Tyreek is 37 on FanDuel, so that also is not an unworkable number. Again, he's only going to get about his 20 minutes, and I'd have to look at him versus other punts at his position, and I think we're more likely to punt at, say, power forward, but would not be out of consideration for a pool. So I just wanted to run that real quick, and yeah, now I'm good.
All right, absolutely. Anthony Davis, Eton Moore out. We saw a variety of players with suppressed minutes. That would be Drew Holiday. We saw Elfrid Payton on a 20 to 25 minute limit. He did play 28. So we've got to like that. Drew, I suspect, will probably crest up a little bit more, but we're not going to see the 37 minutes we would totally hope for. The wild card is going to be Julius Randle and how many minutes he gets. He got about 25 in last night's game. And then we've got Cheick Diallo, who had himself a moment there, Eddie. So we're gonna. I was hearkening back to there are multiple songs with the Chickadee Check Yourself Before You Wreck Yourself. I'm more of a purist. Do you remember who did the original?
Shotgun bullets are bad for your health. The original wasn't that one. It was, God damn it.
I thought it was NWA. It actually wasn't NWA.
No, NWA was the sampled it. It was I don't remember.
Ice Cube, I believe, was at least the first popular one. Snoop Dogg had one after that, and then a couple other groups did it. I went down to YouTube.
That's what I was thinking of. I thought I was missing a preceding one, and I thought Check Yourself Before You Wreck Yourself was out before that.
And I think the phrase definitely was. That was
right. So that's what I thought you were alluding to.
Yes, and I went down the rabbit hole. We saw a little Grandmaster Flash in the Furious 5 today. We saw Cool Mo D in the Wild Wild West, and got into a little Apache. Jump on it. Some of those very nice songs that have been sampled a variety of ways. So in any event, back to tonight's game. What are you going to do with Randall? And then spreading out from there, we've got a $4,700 Elfrid Payton on DraftKings. That has got to be a little bit nice, assuming we see him get 28, maybe 30 minutes in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, so yesterday a lot of people were on Randall, and I pooped on him a little bit. I didn't think he was out of play just because the price has come down a bit, and he's obviously super, super productive guy, but I'm pretty nonplussed again today. A lot of people went with the theory, the studs for this team are out. They're going to limit, today we also have Darius Miller is out as well, by the way. You didn't mention him. He's also not playing.
Oh, good. Last I saw, he was questionable, so thank you for that.
He's out as well. So,
yep, ankle sprain. There we go.
So, there's a lot of minutes to go around. How do they not give them to Randall? And I'm like, they don't want to give them to Randall. A guy who's also been injured a couple times this year, a guy who they aren't sure exactly how that's going to look going forward. It's very similar to the Kenrich Williams situation, where I was like, no, they're going to keep playing that guy because they don't want to win, and they have him, and they want to see what they can get out of him. I think it's a similar situation here, where they've already announced that they're going to start Jahlil Okafor. So, I hesitantly have a couple more minutes for both Okafor and Cheick Diallo than Julius Randle. And at that point, I'll play those guys for much, much less money. Like, Cheick Diallo's 3,100 on DK. I would not expect him to be as productive as we saw in that last game, but the matchup's pretty goddamn stellar. So, kind of hard to get away from him there. Also makes sense on FanDuel, where he's 38. at the beginning of the day, we had yesterday. I was a big fan of, and it worked out. I have to imagine this was the best possible lineup. It was paying down at power forward and center. So you wanted to play. I think you ended up playing Rob, Taj, and Joakim Noah and getting whatever 125 fantasy points out of that 11K, and that obviously was a very good start. And then filling in with the Thunder studs is what we were talking about as we got to lock yesterday, because there were other guys at the beginning of the day where I liked, Jokic, and I liked other players, and I was like, I think your best lineup involves playing a number of guys who aren't your best point per dollar guys. And that put me on a lot more interest in George and Westbrook than I had at the start of the day. Now, admittedly, double overtimes for George was particularly nice, and you got a better game out of Westbrook than I think you had much of a right to expect. But yeah, it ends up being in a somewhat similar situation here. So I again am dubious to pay the price for Randall when you can play some combination of Rob, Diallo, Okafor, Sabonis. I'm even forgetting a couple guys. In that same range, you're getting Capella, who I really like if you're looking at DraftKings. FanDuel, the price isn't quite as appealing. Same story with Jamarcus Cousins. So, I won't tell anyone playing Randall in a tournament lineup is incorrect per se. Obviously, he's a guy who even in 25 minutes can score 50 fantasy points in an exceptional matchup with the Lakers. With a lot of the high usage guys on his team either out or limited. You mentioned Drew Holiday. Again, someone was giving me poop yesterday actually on Twitter. It was like, I'm surprised you didn't like Drew Holiday more. I'm like, I really think they F with his minutes, and they unsurprisingly F with his minutes.
Yeah.
He'll apparently play. I doubt he sees 30 minutes, and I just can't pay the price on him over guard value options and mid-priced options, and not that different for Chris Paul or Kemba Walker or even Kyrie Irving or certainly Devin Booker. So, yep, that's this Pelicans team is a bit of a mess now. Kenrich Williams is he's priced up, but they're gonna throw. He was in foul trouble yesterday too as well. He's gonna play 36 minutes a night for the rest of this year, especially when you get Moore and Miller out of there. So you'll get all the time from him in a matchup with the Lakers. So I can certainly see going there. But at that point, is it worth playing him over even guys across the ball, say Brendan Ingram or Kyle Kuzma? Or so, bit of a mess for the Pellies here. We can count on Kenrich Williams, like Alfred Payton, who you mentioned, 4,700 obviously makes a lot of sense. He's only 51 on FanDuel, where he's not even that outside of. Last night was funny because I had a conversation with a number of people. I shared a lineup I built at 7:30. I found the screenshot I had, and I would have dropped 35. And there was someone else who showed me dropping 41. There was a couple of people who showed me dropping 37 on FanDuel, whereas obviously, and we alluded to this a lot during the show, and I talked with Chris about this a lot. I was like, I just can't see all this value failing. So it was a really interesting game theory night because there were so many, 4K, especially power forwards and centers, who I really, really, really liked. It took other guys who normally I'd want a little bit of exposure to and just took them way the hell out of play, because the only way they were going to work is if somehow all these other amazing options and I said on the show, I have Von Rob projected for 40, and he played 7 minutes less than I thought he would. He still got 40, and there was Taj and all that. So it was a really interesting game theory slate where you were forced to not play your best point per dollar positions on FanDuel, and you had to really build around the positional scarcity. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. But yeah, the Pelicans are a mess. Diallo I like a lot on both sides, especially Diallo I like a lot on both sides. I think you can Kenrich Williams on DK at 5,400, 61 on FanDuel. You can get there against the Lakers, but I'd have limited exposure to. And Alfred Payton, I have concern when they said he was going to play 20 to 25, and he played whatever 28 or he played last night. I don't know how much that gets rolled back, but some tournament exposure there, especially once we get news that he is definitely starting, makes the most sense. But yeah, because they're playing the Lakers, those guys retain some appeal. Very, very limited interest probably going forward in a lot of these guys.
All right. And the two most popular plays this evening thus far on the Osmo ownership projections, which will be updated a couple more times before lock, but check Diallo coming in at 60% on DK, Bazemore at 45%, and then Russell and Giannis below that. Over on FanDuel, it's going to be Diallo is number 2 at 52%. Kelly Oubre at 5,200 is coming in at 60%. Diallo there is 3,800, and then Bazemore at 4,800 is coming in at 50%. as well, with Okafor at 40%. Seems like a bit much to give up there on a center position. As we transition to talking about LeBron, any thoughts there with Okafor on FanDuel in particular at 4,500? If you want to go, maybe that's your cheap guy, punt another position with Diallo, and then spend away at the other spots.
Yeah, at this point, Okafor, I like quite a bit against the Lakers, especially FanDuel, very much in play on DraftKings, but easy pivot away if you had slotted Noah in there. I have him at 20 minutes and hard to be too disappointing at that price. Certainly nothing wrong with going to O'Quinn. Many of the spend-up options aren't as ideally priced on FanDuel. So, but I like Okafor quite a bit against the Lakers. I have him right now for 34 fantasy points. That feels pretty good for $4,500.
All right. LeBron said he's going to have to put team on his back. Going to have to carry it. They're going to need to win about 80% of the remaining 20-ish games if they want to make a run. Seriously. I'm assuming some of the other teams do well and then a couple slide, but the West is just a mess. Some of those head-to-head wins that they're going to get will help them in the standings more than others, but they have a tougher schedule out there. I think and this is from Twitter, and I don't remember who put it out there, but they were pontificating that of the remaining games, there were about 8. Yeah, these are winnable. Should get them both between on the road and at home, and then the rest were kind of tougher matchups where it'll be touch and go, and this is why they play the games. How are you feeling about LeBron in the pantheon of the 5-figure players this evening?
Yeah, that's a big question. We'll get into the sort of game theory questions before, but with all the reasonable value showing up, I have him slightly ahead of Paul George. I have very little confidence in that. I'm not overly worried about George and Westbrook. They're both obviously elite athletes that just came off a significant rest. I do think having played 50 and 40 whatever minutes last night is a negative for them. I've had people say to me today, I think you should just ignore it. I think ignoring it is wrong just because you can't quantify it. Sort of like back-to-backs, where a lot of people are like, yeah, just ignore back-to-backs, or blowouts. Yeah, I just ignore blowouts. I don't think that's right. I would say that I understand someone who says it's really difficult for me to know how to quantify that. But if they weren't on a back-to-back having played 40 and 50 minutes last night, you would project, I don't know, we'll throw some numbers out there and say 59 for Westbrook and 57 for Paul George. I think because of that situation, you can take 1.5 points off those if you played these games out 1,000 times. So I don't think it is irrelevant. It's one of the reasons I slightly prefer LeBron James, who you alluded to. I like LeBron a lot. They're in New Orleans, which I like. The game I expect to stay close. The pace should be brilliant. He's still a little too cheap on DK and perfectly fairly priced on FanDuel. I like LeBron a lot. Don't really want a lot of Lakers after LeBron and then either Ingram or Kuzma. I'm fine playing any two of those three together. Beyond that, it's a little chasey. I will say $5,100 JaVale McGee on DK does retain some appeal for me. Now, it's important to notice that they've gone away from playing a ton of center. I think they played 26 minutes of what you would consider centers in the last game. That's obviously not a lot. I do think there will be matchups, say hypothetically with the Pistons, where you get closer to 38, 40 minutes of real centers. But they're real happy with Kuzma closing out there at the 5, which is a bit of a boon for his situation. But these are still some healthy bodies for New Orleans. So I'd say you're going to get 20 minutes out of JaVale McGee. There's a chance it goes up to 26, 28. At that point, he can put up 40 something, fantasy points here. So depending on fouls and other stuff, not someone I'd have a lot of exposure to, but in 150, I would have a few shares of JaVale McGee because I do think that can work out very positively. And again, alluding to that center time for Kyle Kuzma, that's one of the reasons I would have him a scotch over Brandon Ingram.
All right, let's hit the next game. We've got 4 games that have 233 projected totals or higher. This is the second one. LA New Orleans was the first. Phoenix in Atlanta. We have confirmation that Kevin Huerter is out along with TJ Warren. We do have Kelly Oubre saw the starting lineup over Mikal Bridges, which is quite intriguing because anytime he can get a lot of shots up, that is going to be a good time. For me on the Suns, I like Oubre irrationally. We already know that. You've done enough shows with me. I need to know that I like Kelly Oubre a lot. But I think that...
Washington.
Sorry. No, actually not. But Booker...
He isn't one of your University of Washington guys?
He is not.
Oh, okay. I'll just play it on the team for Washington, D.C. And
yes, I know it is confusing with me and the dueling Washingtons. And Dave in Premium Chat, not Dave Laffy Dave, but Dave, just Dave, said he had never seen us on a show together. What did we figure we've done? 300-400 shows together, maybe more.
Anyone who ever, people very kindly offer to send me big sums of money once in a while. You should send 10% of it to EMAC, because I would never ever have done this if it wasn't for EMAC. I played every day for some 4.5 years and hosted like a show or two in the middle and decided I really enjoyed it, but I simply could not do both to any high degree of quality. I don't want to be a shittier player and a shittier host, so I just said, yeah, I don't want to do both. And I went back for playing for a long time, and then Ethan Gate happened. Ethan Gate happened, and I wasn't allowed to play anymore. And EMAC said, "Hey, why don't you come on a show with me?" And that shit took off. I don't know if you have like actual numbers, but like I started doing shows with EMAC in, I don't know, early November or something, and took the world by storm. And
yeah, we doubled viewership on that site we used to work for after about 3 weeks.
Yeah, it was pretty sexy, and people want a lot of money, which is obviously the end goal, and we had a very nice rapport. So whereas I had ended up getting away from that because EMAC and I both have full-time jobs, he's nice enough to come in on Saturdays and sit with me. So yes, EMAC and I have spent some time on there.
All right, so let's hit out here. Booker, yes. Oubre, yes. Ayton, I like. The issue with Ayton is he's center only, and that there's a lot of centers out there this evening. Do you like any outside of that three? Are we kind of casting aside Tyler Johnson because he's Tyler Johnson, or does he work into cheap value? What say you with the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, I still, this obviously, I guess should be stated outright at the top, is a tremendous basketball game. This and the Kings and Thunder profile as your couple best games of the night, and a lot of guys in both of these games have significant upside, but just the prices here are a little bit juicier on a lot of the players we like and are talking about here. So for Phoenix, which you first alluded to there, yeah, FanDuel, 4,700 for TJ is starting to take him out of consideration. And again, my builds today tend to lead me towards cheap big guys and spending up at guard. So, but $4,700 for a guy who's going to play 30 minutes at point guard versus the Hawks is objectively good, and you shouldn't completely sleep on that. So I have no issue with Tyler Johnson in tournaments there. He's been good in good matchups all year, going back to when he was with the Heat. He would play the Bulls and get 35 repeatedly. So no issue with you playing Tyler Johnson on DK, and I legit like him at $4,100. Excuse me, $4,700 on FanDuel, and I legit like him at $4,100 on the Deke.
All right. Anything else from this side, or do you want to hit on the...
So we did have this game already this year, and it went about as you would expect. You got 60 out of Devin Booker and 50 out of Trae Young and 60-something out of John Collins, and it is a fine spot for those guys. I don't mind DeAndre Ayton in tournaments, which you alluded to. I would rather play Capella, and I would rather play Cousins, so that makes it a little stickier, though FanDuel, he prices much better than those two guys. So DK, where we have more people playing, I don't think I'd have a ton of exposure. 7,300 on FanDuel, where you're actually saving 500 and 700 off Cousins and Capella, makes a certain degree of sense for me. I wouldn't have an issue if you did that. McCall Bridges isn't out of play for me on either side in mid to high fours. I still expect him to get a lot of time off the bench. And Kelly Oubre is 5,200 on FanDuel. That is just objectively too cheap. We're now... I like him more when he's playing off the bench in a vacuum, but I think he actually net gained from this because looking at a very small sample, he got a butt ton of time. And again, a team not on a back-to-back. So really like Booker. Oubre, especially on FanDuel, makes a lot of sense. Tyler Johnson, I really like on both sides. And DeAndre Ayton, especially on FanDuel. And even McCall Bridges. So this is just a great game, and these guys are all just too cheap for their role in it. So as opposed to, the Wizards where I want one, and I don't mind if I have zero, if I don't have a Sun and a Hawk in my lineup and I'm playing one lineup, I'm probably feeling not great about it. There's a chance nobody savages on each team, but I think it's a pretty small chance.
Yeah, I had Adam and I talked about this on the strategy show when we had a little more leisurely time, and I had said my shell lineup had 2 from each side of this game in it on DraftKings.
I think the edge guy, which is, for the first part of the year, I did a lot of this is the bad chalk that will bust, don't play this chalk. And for the second part, I started going, this is the guy I want more of. And we've been good or bad at it. Yesterday, I said the guy I wanted most of was Wiggins. I thought given the spot and all the extra usage and Towns out, he had the potential for a monster and was great. And 6,500, he gave you whatever it was, 35, which was obviously not ideal. But again, you got him at 22, 24% owned, depending site and tournament. That was pretty exciting. I think in this game, at least, it's John Collins. His price has come down for now the nut matchup. Like, he was priced at more. He's now 74 and 76. It's tough to get there on FanDuel, where they're throwing the best value in the universe at you at power forward. But both sites, I have him projected for 43. And again, they played earlier this year, and he had 60 something. I didn't have time to look up that box score, but I recall him and Booker being my favorites going into that game, and them both slaughtering. So, and Booker, especially FanDuel, where he's dollar per dollar cheaper than he is on DK. He's 82. FanDuel, I would have a lot of Booker and then rotate through a couple of the shooting guards I really like. Again, Wes added value. Buddy Hield, I like a lot, and is still mispriced on FanDuel, where he's 63, I think is that number. So.
Yep, he's 65 on DK Hield, that is.
Right, again, another guy who's point per dollar cheaper on FanDuel, which is often a sign of,
All right, for those of you behind the paywall, we do have updates 1 minute ago for projections and 3 minutes ago, or 4 minutes ago now, for ownership, so you'll want to check that out. Nothing at the top really changed for the ownership, except for Giannis is dropping a little bit, as I sort of expected. Tough price point to get to, but we'll talk about him when we get to that game. Looking at the Atlanta side here, absolutely love Trae Young. You did mention Collins. That and Bazemore. Bazemore. Goodness gracious. He is, as you like to say, well too cheap. Outside of that, gets a little tough. Dedmon and Len in the last game both were not on the court at the same time. They were more or less direct replacements for each other, which this team, the Suns, don't have a really big front court. So getting them to play together, very tough on that one. So I'm not really thrilled with either of those guys. Taurean Prince, potentially, DraftKings 4,500. If you want to go game stack, he'll probably be in the mix there. Anybody else you like here? A really $3,500 Bembry on DraftKings.
Yeah, I don't expect a Jalen Adams healthy Bembry to get enough time, and I think he played 18, 20 minutes in that last game. I think that's fine in a tremendous matchup. I don't mind having shares of anyone from this game like that, but I wouldn't mind having a little Bembry, but I would temper my expectations. Alex Len, I liked as a GPP yesterday in minimal shares, but I said you're going to have to get foul trouble on one of the other two bigs for it to get there. He started next to Dedmon the first two times those two teams had danced, but both those games were in the absence of John Collins. Someone just asked a question about Josh Jackson. I'm fine with Josh Jackson because he's playing in this game and is going to play a lot of minutes, but he is further diluted in value when you move Oubre into the starting lineup for me over McCall Bridges. He's now the 3-4 option on offense. At that point, with Booker out there slinging, even Tyler Johnson being more relevant offensively, certainly at times than, say, Elie Okobo or Melton. My least favorite of these Suns starters would be Josh Jackson. I will phrase it that way. Looking across the ball, I do think $4,500 Taurean Prince, especially on DK, is still too cheap. Yesterday, I was pretty low on Bazemore for a few reasons. One being, again, I wanted to spend up at the wings and the guards and spend down at the bigs. And that turned out to work there, and it wasn't that great of a matchup. I don't think it was so much perspicacity, if you will, as me getting lucky. He played a lot of time and just didn't get that. Like, I would have projected him to get closer to 30, maybe a little over it, but this is a brilliant spot for him. So as opposed to yesterday, I know we have I would consider getting to the 45-50% of the field on Bazemore today that I was pretty disinclined towards yesterday, and hopefully his somewhat poorer showing yesterday leads that ownership to be a little more tempered.
All right, let's hit the next game here. Not a ton of excitement. We have Brooklyn and Charlotte. We have seen Kemba Walker's points per minute work up to about just shy of 1.4 with the return of Cody Zeller. That's minutes he's played, not necessarily alongside Zeller, but just in context. Prior to that, when Zeller was out, he was at about 1.1 fantasy points per minute. That's DK scoring courtesy of Adam Ship My Money Share. No real injuries to worry about in this one. We do have one update. We have Miles Bridges was in the starting lineup last night. That sounds like it's a go forward move. They have this is coming from the deep dive per Adam. Very few high usage players in the starting lineup outside of Kemba now. Lamb coming off the bench seems reasonable from the Brooklyn side. Your mileage may vary dramatically. Who was it? It was, not Spencer Dinwiddie. It was Alan Crabb the only player that played over 28 minutes for the Nets in their last game.
By the way, I think you're pulling bad data from Popcorn Machine there.
Okay.
You check. I went through all the popcorn machines and compared them to ESPN last night because I'm trying to figure out the genesis of the errors there. Doesn't matter. But I was looking at all that. If you look at a segment of the third quarter, you will see there were 7 Nets on the court for a while. So while at the end of the day, they told you that Alan Crabb played, I think, 35 minutes, in actuality, he only played 28 and some change. Both he and I think Rondé Hollis Jefferson were credited with some 6 or 7 extra minutes, where in actuality, Crabb played 28 and Rondé played 15, I think is the number. So you can look at that. There were a couple errors yesterday. That was one of them. So no, we didn't even actually get that much. Nobody got 30.
Nobody got it then, yeah.
Nobody.
No, I'm looking. Just as an aside, I always thought they took game logs and had some sort of macro that was doing it behind the scenes, and somehow if something was incorrect in the game logs, that's where they were missing out.
It is scraped, and what happens is they miss a line where this guy checks out, and so it doesn't have him check out, and then it hits an end of a quarter. So what happened is, I think, again, I don't have it in front of me, it showed Crabb playing the entirety of the third quarter, where he actually came out with 6 minutes to go, and that's where the discrepancy came in. But if you looked at it, you'll see that there's a period in the third quarter where there's 7 guys out there for the Nets for 6 minutes.
All right, thank you for pointing that out. I'm just checking the box score for fun here. Really, the only guys I'm looking at, I think that D'Angelo Russell is solid. I'm okay with if I get them, and now they're both center only on DraftKings. Ed Davis occasionally had power forward here and there, but I've set a permanent rule in there, much like I have don't play more than 2 of these 5 Washington guys. I say don't ever play Davis and Jared Allen on the same team on the larger slates is when I enact those rules, and you can set up permanent rules there in Fantasy Cruncher. But outside of those guys, I think it's kind of a dice roll for Brooklyn. On the other side, I'm good with Kemba. I'm not really that excited about Zeller because there are just so many other options this evening, and I'm okay with Lamb coming off the bench. But that's about it for this game. Do you have anything else that you want to highlight?
No, that was almost exactly how I feel on stuff. So I'm right in there. That's just about right. I like Kemba a lot. I think he's my favorite of those, 9K point guards on DK. FanDuel, it's hard to get there, but again, he's certainly not out of play. I do think taking Lamb out of there and having him get less time next to Lamb, which makes sense. You get some extra scoring punch off the bench, and getting Bridges in there. Bridges now, I think reasonably in play. He's 100 over the minimum on FanDuel, and I think 200 over the minimum on DK. I think he's whatever. And he had himself a very decent game last night, so I think he starts and plays 28, 29 minutes. So I'm fine with him as a punt. Upside a little bit more limited, but I'm fine with him. Lamb at 5,800 on DK I think is just great. Again, the Nets and Charlotte have gotten together a few times here, and it is a very nice spot for Kemba. But yeah, Kemba, Lamb, Zeller at 5,300 depends on the rest of how the value big news shakes out, Towns, stuff like that. You can still on DK, where their prices are pretty nice for a matchup with Brooklyn, either Batum or Marvin. I really don't have an issue with any of those guys. So against the Nets, I have some interest in really, I guess, 6. Yeah, I don't have any issue really with running out there in a tournament. Any of the 6 Hornets being the starters, not Jeremy Lamb as a 6th man there. But my interest, again, DK pricing would probably be pursuant to some more news on the bigs. Probably Kemba, Lamb, Bridges, Batum, Williams, Zeller would be my order right now. But Zeller is like almost every center. You can just fall into a pretty giant game against the Nets there. Jared Allen picks up a lot of blocks, but he does not in any way reduce opposing center production. In fact, one of the games this year, you had like a 35 or a 40 out of Zeller, and I think their first matchup when they played this year. So it can happen and will happen. So yeah, at 150, I'd have myself some Cody Zeller. It's just tough with the potential for such amazing value. And when you look at, Check Diallo, and I spoke about John Collins, and now Sabonis is close to a must play, and Kylo Quinn is back in play, and so it's getting a little stickier to get there. That's all.
All right, let's hit on our next game here since we want to keep moving along. We've got 50 minutes left. We've got Memphis at Cleveland. We have word that Jonas Valanciunas is available. Eddie, he was attending to some personal matters in Lithuania. He will have his minutes monitored for what that is worth. On the Cleveland side, just seeing if there's anything major there. Nope. We got Joe Val's okay for personal. We've got Kevin Love is good to go, and then we've got Chandler Parsons will also have his minutes watched, but they said he is available to play as well. I was in the absence of Joe Val, maybe we would have considered Rob again. The other guy that had himself a game last night was Joakim. Yeah, it was Joakim Noah. But I almost said Yannick. There you go. That's your old pal. For my friend in chat that says they're not enjoying me. This is year 30 for me of fantasy basketball. 7 of 8 years profitable in DFS. I do just fine. So thank you.
I'm not saying you don't do well. I didn't see what they said. Did they say that they think you're shit, or did they say that they're not enjoying your hosting? If that's fine.
A variety of things.
Like, I don't like the way you host shows. I'm like, okay.
That part would be fine. That would be fine.
That's your thing, baby. You don't watch.
We good.
My number one rule of DFS is enjoy what you're doing. Unless you're one of the guys I can count on two hands who are so profitable at this that it is by far the best thing to do with your time, and you got to make your money. If you're not enjoying yourself, that's why I try to be occasionally entertaining and or educational, make it a little more interesting. But yeah, if you don't dig somebody's shit, then avoid EMAC shows. Avoid them.
Like the plague. Like
the plague. Right, so let's bust through some of the shitty games real quick.
Conley, whatever. 7,700 is intriguing, but he is on a back-to-back. Kevin Love, it's a back-to-back for him. He's 6,500, not really interested in that. Joe Val, 5K. There are plenty of other fish in the sea for me. Jordan Clarkson, coming off the bench, didn't get as many minutes as I had hoped. Larry Nance is kind of disappointing.
It's not a back-to-back for Kevin Love and the Cavs, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's an error. You can call me out on that one, Chad. But
it's
of
okay.
the 11 teams that are on a back-to-back.
Large slate you will ever see where more teams are on a back-to-back than not. There are 22 teams on this slate. 12 are on a back-to-back. Cavs don't happen to be one of them.
All right.
This game in 30 seconds is, if you want to play Mike Conley or Avery Bradley or Delon Wright in a tournament, feel free. I don't have a problem with minor exposure to them. I still think you probably play Von Rob on FanDuel. I suspect Noah gets a little bit limited here. That's just my guess, but I still think $3,800 on FanDuel of Von Rob is still very pretty. I'm absolutely fine going there. When we get Towns news, he probably now would fall behind Diallo and Taj Gibson in your $3,800 and $3,900 power forward rankings, but he's still just fine. Other than that, Chetty Osman on FanDuel is still cheap enough. It's just a shit game. So you want to play a Colin Sexton or a Chetty Osman, feel free. You want to play Kevin Love on FanDuel, go ahead. But moving on.
Detroit, Miami, a little bit of a mess here. We've got Justice Winslow and James Johnson ruled out. Zaza Pachulia is available. Goran Dragic will be coming off the bench. Richardson is okay in my mind. Dwayne Wade, I think, is also adequate at his price on DraftKings. From the Detroit side, if you're going to go look at matchups, do remember that Drummond in the last meeting was when he got bonked in the head and then missed 3 or 4 games. So he only played about 7 minutes in the previous one. It was not an ejection. Whiteside has had mixed results in his career against Drummond, so really nothing to exploit there. And then Griffin last night was ejected early on technicals, so he, even though it's a back-to-back, didn't play a full allocation of minutes. This one, I'm not really excited for really many of the players. It has a 209 over-under, which is the second lowest on tonight's slate.
Yeah, I don't mind a piece of this, but again, Winslow's out. So FanDuel, you can play Richardson or Whiteside in a tournament. I guess you can play Dwayne Wade at 54. Dragic is 46 there. That is somewhat slightly interesting for me. I can sort of, I don't think I'd do it, but I think he probably gets 23, 24 minutes. Like the matchup's pretty good for him individually. Adebayo is in play on both sides. If I was playing 150 lineups, I'd have 1 or 2 of each. I think all you need is, Whiteside to get in some foul trouble or just to get the shits, and then you could get 30 minutes of him, and that could certainly work out. But DK, there's a number of more appealing prices. I like Dwayne Wade At 4,700, I slightly prefer Bogdan Bogdanovic, who I believe is $100 less. So I'm a little more inclined towards that. But Wade, I would have some interest in. Kelly Olynyk at 3,800, I think there's a chance gets 29, 30 minutes here. It depends on how many of James Johnson's minutes flow to him versus re-emerging Derek Jones Jr. and some other guys in this rotation. But $3,800 Kelly O makes a fair bit of sense to me. So that I like a good bit in tournaments. Again, you can still run Whiteside in the tournament. It's a bad matchup. You need things to go weird for Whiteside to get there, but he's a guy who just carries a 50-point ceiling if weird shit happens. But usually him and Drummond, have each other's rebounds a little bit, don't make the other one terribly functional under the rim, and they both fall into 30 for Whiteside, 40 for Drummond fantasy points, which just isn't quite good enough. Someone says any love for Zizic? He's on the line of someone I could play in a tournament. I mentioned it before the last game. He was very productive in his time on the court. He's like 444 or something. I don't think it's very similar to yesterday in that there's going to be really, really good value bigs. It's going to be hard to go off the board like that because you need multiple. You know what I'm saying? When there's one really good piece of chalk or two really good piece of small big chalk, you can run Ante Zizic and hope at least one of them fails. When there's two pieces of chalk and they're not that good, then you can run Zizic because it's more likely they fail and there's not that many of them. When there's like 5 cheap, chalky good plays that we can project for 30s and 40s and fantasy points for $4,000 or $5,000. It's really hard to put Zizic in your life. So Zizic is in a spot where normally I would think it's reasonable. Today I probably wouldn't go there.
All right, let's move on to our next.
Are up, by the way. I had a couple people ask. They've been up 8-10 minutes, I think.
Sorry, what about?
The rankings are up.
Oh, excellent. So Fast Eddie's rankings are up. We just had another ownership update, so that again continues to flow. Promo code live before lock, all one word, gets you.
Levert is starting.
Levert is starting?
Yep.
Okay, there we
Still
go.
Not a ton of interest. Back-to-back, massive leg injury, playing next to Russell. It just generally makes them both a little bit worse. But at least now, if you were going to do it, I do think by the end of the year, he's playing 28, 30, 32 minutes. So a couple games ago, he played 28 or whatever. Last game went back down to 21. And again, it's a sticky situation. But they're not on a back-to-back, actually. The Nets, they didn't play last night. They played Thursday. So you can talk me into Levert at this point.
All right, Boston and Chicago will be the next place we are going here. Gordon Hayward is available. Aaron Baines still out for Chicago. Not that they needed yet another option, but Timothy Luau-Cabarrot is available. From this one here, I mean, Kyrie Irving is very nice, but we have Boston as double-digit road favorites. He's solid. We know he has 50 fantasy point upside damn near anytime he takes the court, but could he get 60? Feel like that ceiling could be muted. I'm okay with Al Horford and Jason Tatum mixing them in. If you're playing over there on draft, you can get Jason Tatum with your very last pick in the 8-mans. I recommend saving a guard spot, double checking when you do your last pick that Ricky Rubio is still out there and taking, wait for it, Luka Doncic, who is a game time decision. And then you've got your out because you can go to Rubio in that last game.
I think you'd go to Donovan Mitchell more often than
he usually will be drafted. Draft Eddie is a new development.
I thought you were talking just like I only caught the end. I thought you were talking
yeah. No, we'll talk strategy for that when we get to the end. But I just wanted anybody that's doing drafts now, Doncic is not being undrafted. So if you've got your out there, it would be Rubio. So just who knows what's going to happen. And I wasn't waiting around on Karl Anthony Towns there because there are just too many other decent centers. But back to this one, Horford, sure. Tatum, yeah. Kyrie, I don't hate it. On the other side, I really like Lauri Markkanen. The rebounds have come up dramatically, particularly since he's getting a fair number of minutes at the 5. We've seen Rolo play 30 minutes in the last couple games. Eddie, your thoughts on that would be welcome. And then you've got Otto Porter, Zach Attack, rounding it out. Those would be the guys I go to. Chris Dunn, to me, just kind of mucks it up. And since he's kind of been dinged up most of the season, I don't really want to look to him on such a large slate. What do you like from either side of this contest?
I don't like anyone. There are guys I think are playable in single bullets. The Celtics have just all right. So the Celtics have just destroyed the Bulls this year. Here's a trick question. The same player has been the leading fantasy scorer for the Chicago Bulls in both of their games against the Celtics this year. Who was it? I'll give you 5 guesses. I bet you don't get it.
Bobby Portis.
Nope.
Jabari Parker.
Nope.
Rolo.
Nope.
Felicio.
Nope. And like, because I gave you a hint, you're not saying Zach LaVine and Markkanen, and it's not them either. It's Shaq Harrison.
Oh my. Okay, I would never have gotten that one.
Well, your highest score both times for the Bulls, these two teams have played. Now, again, that's not the world's largest sample size. Could you get a good game out of Zach LaVine or Lauri Markkanen? Sure, but now you're talking about on a giant slate, getting a good game out of guys in nearly a worst possible matchup who aren't priced that well. Like, even the DK prices, which are better, are like 8 for Lauri Markkanen and 7.3 for Zach LaVine. So you can do it in one lineup. I think it's just wrong. But those are guys who have a 50-point upside, and they will be appropriately 3% owned. So feel free to run a bull out there, but you're asking for trouble. So I have perilously little interest in the Bulls, who need to A, keep it close, and B, and no, don't play Shaq Harrison. That's not what I'm saying, but he's still on the team. He made it through the trade deadline. Yeah, and by the way, those two highest scores were like 32 and 26. There was one of the worst possible fantasy games ever this year. I don't have it up, but it's the Bulls versus the Celtics one time had Shaq Harrison with 26, someone else with 22, and no one with more than like 17. Like, it was one of the most curb-stompingly awful fantasy games you'll ever see. So yeah, Bulls, I am not running anyone in one lineup in a million years. If I am forced to go into it, we'll use DraftKings prices in tournaments. I would probably rank them. Oh, Jesus. Like, the prices just aren't even any better. Rolo is the first guy. You made me play a guy to be like, Rolo, I can see getting there, but I would just spend as little as possible at that point. So, Archie Diacono, Shaq Harrison, maybe, presuming this game blows out horribly. Yeah, so I won't even bother wasting time going a little deeper into it than that. For the Celtics, if this game stays close, and the Bulls have kept a couple of games close recently, they've looked a little bit better over the recent games. I got to give them credit for that. Some of the Celtics, especially DK prices, make a little sense for me in tournaments. $4,200 Marcus Smart is just a guy because he can pull the defensive stats. There's an upside there. Tatum at 61 on DK is still pretty cheap. I have him as a B cash play and a B tournament value. If the game stays close, yeah, he can get on top of that. And again, you want Celtics, not Bulls. I'll take the guys going at the Bulls, not the guys going at the Celtics. Marcus Morris, 51 and 4,900. Horford again, who was, all the money on Thursday. That worked out for everyone. Prices come up a little bit. 82 on FanDuel is really tough to go there over. Capella, Cousins, et cetera, et cetera. 64 on DK. You can play him as a forward. I got no problem doing that. Gordon Hayward, if he plays, is 46. So, for me, this is don't play a Bull and maybe play a Celtic where he happens to slot in. But I'm very dubious. There's just better plays. Like, right. Could one of these guys really? It's a team that runs deep. You want to run Daniel Tice? I left him ranked. And by the way, if you remember 50, whatever the hell point Daniel Tice Day, that was in one of the Bulls blowouts. And there is still no Aaron Baines. So Tice might be my favorite in tournaments. I have to sit there for a while. But I have some tournament appeal, especially on DK for Smart, probably most. Tice, Tatum, Horford, Morris. But the team's getting healthy at this point. Even if it isn't a total slaughter blowout, they do tend to, in games that seem well in hand, middle the minutes a little more, where the bench guys come up, and instead of seeing splits go 32 and 16, they go 29 and 19. It's just it's a big ass slate to mess around on the ship. All
right, the next game is a little more enticing.
Yeah,
out there we have Sacramento, we have Oklahoma City.
Oh, enticing! I didn't see your clever play on words there. That's nice. It would have been better if you were going into the Boston game.
Yes.
Well, would have been strong. I'd have been good. I enjoy a good word play. That's nice.
All right, we've got our next game here, Sacramento, OKC. OKC played in the double overtime last night. Westbrook fouled out in the first overtime. I think he played about 43 minutes. George played 50. Jeremy Grant didn't play a ton. Somehow Raymond Felton, I don't believe, saw the court, which surprised me just a skosh, but we'll have to see what happens there. I think the primary guys, the three I mentioned on OKC, are fine. Steven Adams, I think there are other options out there. If he's going to be boxing out for Westbrook and not grabbing those rebounds himself, limits his upside somewhat. On the other side, Sacramento, very interesting here. They have they're feeling strong after taking, for the fourth game this season, taking Golden State down to the wire. Those were all close games. They're riding high. They've got Bogdan Bogdanovic is starting now, so I think that is nice. We had Bagley, whose price is creeping up, but he laid down a monster, as they say. I think those guys are fine. Buddy Hield, I think, is intriguing, as you mentioned earlier, much better on FanDuel, but he's 6,500 on DK. Definitely in the mix there. We've got two nice later turbo slate games on DraftKings. All of these guys are in the mix for that. On the regular big giant 22 teams in our player pool slate, what do you like from this game, Eddie, as it checks in with the highest over under at 239 and a hook?
I like Steven Adams a lot.
Okay.
He's looked bad and played infinite time last night, so this is not without risk. This is probably only tournaments for me, but this matchup is really ideal for him. He's been good. This is the fourth matchup between these two teams this year. Some of my favorite games to watch. These are two of my favorite teams in the NBA to watch play basketball. Just for all the raw talent on Sacramento, and I really enjoy the defense and a couple of the other things that the Thunder have been doing this year. But I like Steven Adams, especially at FanDuel, where that mid-range center thing is like, if you land on Steven Adams, I'm okay with it. And it hasn't been. I did not get time to pull this because I just watched all these games not that long ago before their last matchup, which I guess was December. I think they played October, November, December. But I remember like rewatching each of the two previous games and watching that game that night. So I've seen the three games collectively in their entirety 5 times here. I like Steven Adams. He had like 35, 40, and 55 fantasy points in the first 3 matchups or something. There is some sort of ceiling to be achieved there. So this is a spot that's good enough that even though I do have lingering health concerns and back-to-back and 40 whatever the hell minutes he played last night, there's still some appeal there. Again, I don't think the double overtime is good for George, or relatively the single overtime for Westbrook. But that being said, they're, again, quality pay-up options on a slate where there's really good big value. So much of the roster construction rules from last night apply here as well. So I think those are the guys. $4,800 Jeremy Grant on DK does deserve tournament consideration as pivots off some of the chalkier guys. And because of the time and other things, this is another day where I don't hate firing a shot at Nerlens Noel.
Okay.
Going across the ball, obviously, for the Kings, they're basically running, a 6-man rotation of relevance with their new starting lineup with Bielitsa completely expurgated from the process. He's out of the rotation entirely. I like all 6 of those players to varying degrees. Harrison Barnes, obviously the most challenging at getting towards an upside, but in a game that's fast, Ed, I think he's 49 on DK. All these guys priced better on DK. That's actually not true. All the bigs priced better on. That's not even true. Sorry, about half these guys are priced too well on FanDuel and half are priced too good on DK. Come to think of it, Fox is the same price on both. Has had like a 50 and a 60 against. Just the pace here is brilliant for him. The difference being there's overtime in one of those games as well, actually. Sorry, I'm just doing a lot of recollection in my head here as we go through this. Anyhow, Fox, you're now looking at playing 32, 33, 34 minutes. So the odds of him getting 55 are well lower. But I think he makes sense as sort of a placeholder on DK if you have $400, if you're waiting for James Harden news. We don't have James Harden news yet, right? You didn't mention. James Harden's questionable.
We have James Harden questionable still of the games yet to play. We've got Karl-Anthony Towns questionable. We've got Luka Doncic questionable. So there's some huge news we're waiting on.
There's some news there. Doncic being sort of the least relevant of them. Like, you got to understand, this is Dallas on a back-to-back going into Utah. So of the news there, that's the one where I'm like, okay, if he's in, I like getting really low on Luka Doncic. That's a pretty tough spot, and he's not that goddamn cheap at like 8,800. If he's out, I don't know if I really want to do back-to-back Jalen Brunson going against the, so like that's a little, Tim Hardaway Jr. has left me limp over the last few games. So, the Doncic news is the one that I think has least actual force and effect there. But yes, obviously some studs still in a questionable position. So, the Fox Paul, if you can sort of set that up as, if Harden's in, I'll stick with the Aaron Fox and maybe make another pivot with my $400. Otherwise, I'll play Chris Paul. Makes a lot of sense. I like Buddy Hield. There's a real ceiling there. A little bit less cashy, but again, the FanDuel price is too cheap. And Bagley is cheap. Same price FanDuel and DraftKings. I think he's 61 on both. So that, again, making him a little more appealing on FanDuel. But fine spot for him and absolutely fine to play him in either one. Bogdan is appropriately priced on FanDuel at like 58 for this role. I mean, this is just a monster pace game, and basically this Kings lineup at this point is 29 to 33 minutes for those 6 guys, and then little bits of whatever Giles, Farrell, and those other guys. So all those guys have some appeal for me, and it's worth especially noting the really low prices on Cauley-Stein, Barnes, and Bogdanovich on DK, and the relatively low prices on Hield, Fox, and to a lesser degree Bagley on FanDuel. But yeah, you're gonna want some of this game, and no one profiles particularly brilliantly or particularly terrible of the guys. Like, I really don't want a Harrison Barnes on FanDuel. Outside of that, most of these plays on either site are just fine to me.
All right, we're going to keep moving. Premium Slack, you can get me the questions. Wait till we get to the last games here. Pardon?
They are sending them. I'm getting pinged. Many a question I am trying to ignore.
Yes, I promise you, we'll focus on that. That's why we're trying to race through here.
Alfred Payton is starting.
Pardon?
Alfred Payton is starting. Randall is starting at the 4.
Okay.
So revisiting the Randall question here now, this would move my minutes projection from him from like 26 to from like 26 to 30 or 31. That's pretty interesting for me in this point. So got to pivot a little bit here. Lakers starting who they are, who we thought they were, but Elf 4,700. Yeah, we can look at that now. Probably still slightly prefer $4,100 non-limited Tyler Johnson on DK, but FanDuel $5,100 Elf makes some sense, and Orange Julius makes some sense as well there. And Gordon Hayward is in, by the way, officially.
Okay, and then just a little note. Here's what Adam said in the deep dive article behind the paywall, live before lock. All one word will get you 50% off any 1 month package. He had said Randall played just 25 minutes last night, which is obviously concerning. He is projecting him for 34 unless he hears he's going to be limited. He said if it was under regular conditions, not these dumpster fire mode that the Pelicans in, he would have gone as high as 38 or 40, but he says 34 is probably a reasonably aggressive stance at this point with a little bit of upside. So a little bit more than what you had said, but similar line of thought there.
I'll strongly disagree.
Okay.
Last night they could have, when they went into the fourth quarter last night in that game, the Pelicans were down by 3. And they did not run a lot of Randall to close. They didn't run any Brow to close. Drew barely saw the court in the fourth quarter. I think 34 is very aggressive. I think under any circumstances, 38 or whatever would have been. I mean, if you're saying earlier this year,
earlier in the year when everybody was playing,
sure. But I'll say 31 now. I don't think 34 is impossible. I'm just really inclined to think they go smaller, and you just get more, or not even necessarily smaller, but they just run kids out there more, and you get. I think they'd rather run Kenrich at the 4, even though with no Moore and no Miller, he's going to be really busy at the 3. I think Diallo and Okafor just end up getting more time there. But all those guys being out, I'm quibbling over those last 3 minutes. But either way, Randall makes a good deal of sense at his price still. There is a very real upside there.
All right, 3 more games to go here. We've got Minnesota and Milwaukee. We do not know what is going on with Karl Anthony Towns. He, again, was in a car accident. He did fly to last night's game separately from the team. He is in Milwaukee tonight, but he is going to have to clear the concussion protocol. I don't know that we'll get that news before the main slate locks, but again, if you do have late swap on 3 of the 4 sites that you're playing, 3 of the 5 sites that most people play on, you can have some wiggle room. Just make sure you have an exit strategy there. Let's see.
Good rule of thumb I just want to bring up real quick is if you are playing significant other Pelicans, I would rather play John Collins. If you largely are devoid of Pelicans otherwise, which if you have, no Diallo, maybe no Okafor, I can see going to Randall there. Raw points, I think at this point I'm still going to prefer John Collins by 1 or 2, and I think the ownership will be fairly similar. So that's just where I come in there. So if I have Diallo, I'm probably going to play John Collins, who prices pretty similarly. If I don't have Diallo, I'm probably going to play Julius Randle there, but very close.
Okay, definitely makes sense. With Milwaukee here and Minnesota, it is and I don't know if you can read stuff into this or not, Eddie, but Minnesota is favored by 12 at home. I would have figured that they'd still be favored, but closer to 8 if Towns was guaranteed in. One of the big questions we keep getting is, do you think Towns will play tonight?
Yeah, Milwaukee is favored, not Minnesota.
I'm sorry, yes. Milwaukee's favored.
Sure. I will guess he does not play. He received a concussion, I believe, we're talking 48 hours ago, and he played 300 and something consecutive games. My guess is they keep him out again. I have no extra information. I do actually know somebody who works for the Timberwolves, but have not spoken to him today, and I'm not sure this would be in his wheelhouse anyway. But my guess is that he doesn't play. It would seem strange for me to rush him back from a concussion. The streak is now gone. This is obviously a very difficult matchup anyway. If I'm them, I just give him some more time. But, all that is trumped by him showing up, passing the test, and saying, I feel great, I want to play. Saunders is going to play him. So I'll go 60-40. He doesn't play if you want my guess right now. But that's my thought process, and I don't consider it particularly intuitive or having any information other people don't possess. For that reason, I still have some interest in Andrew Wiggins. He is. If I'm going to take guys against this Bucks team, which is something I'm generally loath to do, it would be a guy like Andrew Wiggins. I am still perfectly fine, and actually a pretty big fan of Taj Gibson on either site. In the event Towns plays, that can go particularly badly, but he still functions as a punt on FanDuel. The existence of Ivan Robb and Check Diallo make me log him third of that triumvirate of really cheap power forward options on FanDuel. But I have no issue if you want to throw Taj in there, because worst case is he plays 16 minutes, probably doesn't do well, and you drop him. This is a dreadfully bad matchup. This is a remarkably good Bucks team. You have not seen, again, they only played the one previous time this year, but unsurprisingly, it was a very difficult spot for the Timberwolves. They weren't particularly good. They got spanked. The minutes are less dependable than they were in the Thibodeau era. So I'm dubious about this game. I don't mind having some shares of the I'll get there, Bucks. Because, there's been a couple times recently I said, Giannis is out there, but I generally like him less than LeBron and someone else. And even in more difficult spots, he still gets out there and throws his spoon out there and gets 60. But obviously there is some potential for a blowout. And not unlike the Celtics, the minutes can be even more limited. And this being a team that has really been more cautious with the minutes anyway. You look at a couple of these other stud teams or stud guys, where you talk about Bradley Beal, who's going to play 37 in a not close game and 42 in a close game. Eric Bledsoe plays 29 minutes now. That's his regular rotation. Chris Middleton plays 31. Giannis plays 32. So you need all those goddamn minutes. Now, they're all very good players to a certain extent. So Mirotic being there also, in theory, limits a couple guys a minute or two here or there. I think that pulls a bit off Brolo and Giannis and even Middleton. So, 5K Brogdon makes sense. That's even reasonable as a cash play, as a consistent producer. Bledsoe at 6,300 on FanDuel is just grotesquely too cheap if you think this game stays close. There's obviously a ton of merit there. But, for me, very wizardly in that I'm fine with 0. I'm fine with 1. That's about all I want here.
All right. And Gorgie is still out for personal reasons.
Which is key. If he was in this, I'd like Gorgie a lot just for the potential with Towns being out. But, yes, that is key.
All right, next game. We're getting a ton of questions about this. Let's just not bury the lead. We have Harden questionable with midsection injury.
Some midsection injury.
Well, it's my hockey training. I was joking about that earlier.
That whole lower body thing from hockey has all. I figured I haven't looked at hockey in a decade. I've thought they'd changed it by now. They used to crack me up. What's wrong? His lower body. Oh,
yeah, it's lower body, upper body, and occasionally they'll say head, but oftentimes head is still upper body. So
that's absolutely hilarious. So no problem. He's either been decapitated, had a heart attack, or broke his pinky. Same thing. Got it.
So cervical strain here. Now I didn't look to see if that meant neck, if that meant lower back, or if it meant groin region.
It means neck.
Okay, neck. Okay. So
you have several cervixes on the body, and even one more if you're a woman. But I believe it is a neck issue with Harden.
All right. So do you think he's going to play? What would you do on FanDuel where it locks?
I'll go 60-40. He does play, but I have no reason to play James Harden on FanDuel. Like, I will say $4,000 odd and play Devin Booker against the Hawks. Like, I think FanDuel, you're being too key. You want to leave the spot there on DK? I think it's brilliant where he's only 11.5, and Paul wasn't in that game, but he played the Warriors earlier this year and had 90 something, I want to say. Like, I guess it's not insanity on FanDuel. The theory being you're willing to accept a large risk. But, Paul is back, so that lowers our entire, chart of expected outcomes a little bit. But yeah, the answer is you're fine to play Chris Paul on FanDuel right now. 8K is a perfectly reasonable price tag. If you look at his game since returning from injury, his worst was, I think, like 37, and then there's several 40s and 42s and a 50. The matchup is pretty good for him, actually. So I like Chris Paul just fine. Have a Chris Paul plan in the event that James Harden doesn't play. So if you're playing somewhere with late swap, he's going to be one of my favorite plays if he can go in. DK specifically, $4,400 Eric Gordon is very tasty. Again, you will have probably locked your Kent Bazemore already, but if somehow you get news before the Hawks game locks, which I'm pretty sure is a 7 p.m. lock, if we get news at 6:58 that James Harden is out, I would probably, just for the ownership, immediately take all my Bazemore and turn it into Eric Gordon.
Okay. That's
swap that the hell out and be like, we'll try to do this, and you'll get your 6% Eric Gordon against the 45% on Bazemore, and I'd have them projected. I'd have Bazemore projected for about 1.5 points higher, but at that point, I'll just go with the pivot there and another guy who has a giant ceiling. I like Capella regardless. Having Cousins in there makes it interesting. There were some overtimes in this game earlier. It's interesting. These two teams played twice this year. The first game was the most disappointing fantasy game ever. I don't remember, but it was like 95-85 or something. Really disappointing game. And then the second time they had at least one overtime, and it was like 140-140. I like Capella. Just plenty there. I don't want to play Fareed at this point. Even with Harden out, basically, it becomes like Gordon more, like Paul more, like Capella even a little bit more in that situation. PJ Tucker, by the way, is now $3,600 on DK. Nobody wants to play PJ Tucker, and there's obviously a superfluity of value at the forward positions. It's still $3,600 for a guy who's going to play, 35 minutes in a really fast game. So I would have some of that. Send your hate mail to @shipmymoney DFS.
Fair enough. Going over to the Golden State side. Well, it's an if then with Harden out. As you mentioned, Chris Paul just phenomenal, and I do like PJ Tucker on DK. For Golden State, DeMarcus Cousins no longer has a minutes limit. Still think he's going to get around 30, but this is a very nice matchup for him. Capella is back, but still working his way into things. He missed about 6 weeks. Again, it was a thumb injury, so we'd like to think his conditioning is up, but still NBA live action is much, much different than bikes and treadmills. Golden State is favored by 9 here. What do you like from Golden State? Curry and Cousins would probably be my top 2 favorites. I don't hate Andre Iguodala. Not a ton of upside, but if you need wiggle room or are leaving some sort of 2v2, do not forget about him in the late last couple of games.
Yeah, Iguodala, and I guess by extension Looney, although that needs to be a blowout to really work out, because at this point, if Cousins is playing 30, which hasn't happened yet, but certainly now apparently could, you have Looney playing 18, and that's really hard for him to get there. For the bench guys to look at, I agree with you. My 2 favorite would be Cousins and Curry at their current prices, either FanDuel or DraftKings. It's close on DK. I have Curry for a point more than Kevin Durant, and he that last game I talked about Curry over Durant a lot, and Durant had more than Curry on FanDuel, but Curry got there on DK and had a better game. He had to be somewhat fluky, 7 stocks out of Kevin Durant or something, where he just kept swatting the shit out of Bagley or whomever. But I think that's right. It's this team is going to continue to be an issue with the fact that they just have so many mouths to feed, and putting Cousins out there starts to yank away at the upside on giant slates. It's funny, as alluding to that previous game, which went to overtime. You had 4 of the Warriors finish between 45 and 50 fantasy points, and nobody got 50. So it was like, wow, somehow they went to overtime, and that game was like 137 to 135 or something like that. None of them were really that good. Clay was good because, again, he's cheaper. And Draymond was good because, again, he's cheaper. So I do think wanting Harden to be out, it ends up working out a little bit better for Curry. But, it's Cousins, probably my favorite here. But I'm not as enamored of this team as I am of other guys. I just think that there's I like Curry. I like Devin Booker for $1,000 less. But these guys end up being really nice. Like I want to have a warrior. I think I'm probably most inclined towards Cousins. So probably Cousins, Curry, Draymond at that extremely diluted price, Thompson, Durant, but not a giant integral difference between them. There's not a lot of differentiation between how much I like each of those various players. So they end up being, really nice pivots off more expensive and probably all higher owned Westbrook and Paul George.
All right. From the Utah,
Tyler Johnson will start. I don't think that was ever really in doubt, but there it is. Oubre will start. I don't think that was ever really in doubt. Gordon Hayward won't have a minutes limit, so $4,600 Gordon Hayward, doable.
All right, we got 15 minutes. We got one game left, and we're going to just pound some questions here. We got Dallas at Utah. Utah's favored by 11. We do not know what is up with Luka Doncic. We'll have to see. Double overtime game last night for the Jazz. Derek Favors had himself a game. He went 10 of 11 from the field with 11 boards in 32 minutes. Ingles played 46, Gobert 44, Rubio 41, Mitchell 46, and then off the bench Crowder had 37. The remainder of the guys were in the teens or lower there. I really think to play any of the key pieces here from the Jazz in any significant quantity, you're going to want to have Doncic, and I don't think we're going to get the news in time for that one. I have reasonable interest in Rubio on DraftKings and Gobert on DraftKings. Gobert at $7,900 seems like an adequate price point where he can at least get a solid double-double, maybe like a 15-15 going against Salah Mejri, Dwight Powell, etc. On the other side, I'm fine with Powell. That's really it for me. Not really looking to the late night hammer here. What do you got for the last game for us?
Yeah, someone just dropped in our premium Slack tweet from Jonathan Fagan, who I believe is the beat reporter for the Houston Chronicle, but he's a reputable source. The vibe, I don't know what that means, but he's at the game, seems to be that Harden will not play tonight. But second team bus has not arrived at Oracle, and Harden can be tough to make sit out. So I presume that first bit about the bus means that he's not there yet, which, there's the same tweet again. So, I really like Chris Paul. Go ahead and throw him in there on FanDuel at 8,000. He's not a must by any means, but that makes a fair bit of sense to me. Going at that last game, I really don't want to play Jazz guys on double overtime game in a game where they're, I think they're a double-digit favorite and Luka may not play. I don't mind Luka in tournaments. If he plays, you will get him at a very juicy low-owned price. I don't think you can play him non-late swap. I'm always going to be excited for 3% Luka, but going into Utah is a legit bad matchup. I'd honestly rather move to questions at this point. Like there is just not a lot for me here. If you want to play Gobert in a tournament, that's fine. Gobert, just because of blocks and shit, obviously has the giant upside, and they don't have anyone who's going to stop him. So, their center minutes are broken up between Mejri and Powell, and occasionally Maxi Kleber. None of those project as a particularly difficult spot, but I know this is the late game, and everyone likes to get their hammer on. Crowder is really cheap. I'll give you that. He's 44 and 41. I don't even mind FanDuel where you can drop him at 44. Jay Crowder, that's fine for me. But yeah, I'm generally disinclined towards this game. Donovan Mitchell's a little too cheap on FanDuel, or he's down to 83. But again, that's more than I'm spending on Booker. I have trouble getting there.
All right, let's have some fun here. Circling back, what about Kyle O'Quinn? What are you projecting him points wise again with Turner out? About 20? Does that feel right?
Yeah, I would think again, not points. Points, I would have fantasy points somewhere in the high 20s.
Okay.
This is an exceptional matchup, and he's a really good point per minute producer. So I mean, he's the same thing as yesterday. I said he'd get like 1.3 per. I think he got closer to 1.4 per. But yeah, that's basically it. I think 20 to 22 minutes, 26 to 30 fantasy points are your likely floors and ceilings, which are fine. It makes him, believe it or not, a very nominal play on DK if he puts up, or even on FanDuel. He was dropped by a lot of people last night, which is fine because it meant that all your guys got more than 28 or what have you. Magruder starting for Miami. Okay. So they're going to start Magruder, Waiters, Olynyk, Whiteside, Richardson playing functional point guard to start does not do a ton for me. You can still Jay Rich, but yeah.
Let's see. Oh my gosh, so many questions here. Apologies. Cash game, FanDuel, LeBron or Paul George?
I'm going to play LeBron. I have him for a fantasy point more. I do not have a strong take, which I guess I should say. I'm going to play LeBron.
This is DK tournaments, Okafor and Portis or Collins and Tyler Johnson.
The Utah game is not on FanDuel. Is that?
Wait, what?
I have to go look at that. FanDuel dropped that game. Like I looked at prices before, but with my lack of affection for this game, it's not on the FanDuel slate.
Wow. Well, that's one way to
on this shit.
Wow.
They dropped the which
makes sense with no late
because it is a shit game with uncertainty and stuff. I don't mind. It is a full. I think it's a 10 o'clock game. The others are 8:30 is the latest, so it is a full 90 minutes after the others. That generally that's just bad fucking pool. Like I cannot get behind that. That's fine. It's not as bad as changing the lock time 10 minutes before it locks, but
4 times. But hey, who's counting?
Only 3, I think. Was it 4?
Hey,
I think they did 10 after 15 after 20 after go, but whatever.
Oh, what a mess. Just what a mess.
12,000 viewers. Sorry.
Pardon?
Nothing. Go.
We've got can you play Diallo and Okafor together in tournaments? Question 2, how many Suns is too many on DK Cash or FanDuel Cash would you go as high as 4?
Yes, you can play those 2 guys together without compunction. How many Suns is too many on FanDuel Cash was the question?
Yes.
It depends on who they are. I'll go back and pull up my FanDuel pricing notes for the Suns. I really like Booker in Cash. So if you have Booker, Tyler Johnson, I think that's fine. DeAndre Ayton, in Cash, I really wouldn't. I imagine my answer is 3, but it is going to depend a lot on who the 3 are. Like, do you have $3,900 Rashawn Holmes as a punt in your Cash lineup? That seems wrong because he's a power forward. We obviously have some exceptional power forward prices there, but it depends to an extent who they are. 2 is obviously fine. 3 is probably fine if 1 is Tyler Johnson.
All right. We did get a starting lineup here for the Grizzlies, and Joe Val is starting. Does that change anything with him still having minutes monitored?
Like him a lot on DK at 5,000. Like the pace obviously there is not brilliant, but makes a fair bit of sense in tournaments at this point. Am I right? He's 5,000 on DK and 6 something on FanDuel. I for some reason have expurgated that particular bit of knowledge from my brain pan. He's somewhere around there. I think that's it. Rep me Rook. Valanciunas 5,068 on FanDuel. Yeah. So he's fine. He is an exceptional point per minute producer. There is nothing about this matchup that will stop him at this point. I would have to probably project him for something like 23 minutes and 31 fantasy points, which makes him quite good. And there is a ceiling where you can get 25 minutes and 42 fantasy points. So he is a very good tournament play on DK. I didn't want to play Rob anyway there. You probably shouldn't have been playing Noah anyhow, though some people will, which would be good. Rob's still fine for me on FanDuel.
All right, 1 second.
You're struggling at point guard on FanDuel. In one lineup, who are your 2? Some combination of Trae Young, Chris Paul, De'Aaron Fox, Tyler Johnson. Don't hate Steph Curry. Any of those 5 guys, I think, are just great in any amount. So mix and match whoever works in with your available dollar.
All right, sorry, I'm just doing my last little upload here, and then I've got... All right, boom, there we are. We're good. Okay, dedicating to nothing but questions. We've got, and this is just a follow-up. Harden is an A in your rankings. Does the Q tag scare you off?
Yes, I mean that is presuming he plays. It's very difficult for me without notations to talk about ratings on guys. So, like, if I ranked Karl Anthony Towns because he could play, generally I lower somebody's Cash ranking a little bit because of that. I may have left Harden as an AA because he's always going to, like, if he plays, he's going to get you 50 and quite possibly 60, 70. and he has potential to be a high scoring player on the slate. So you really can't get away from an AA rating for James Harden. But yes, I'm terrified he doesn't play. Like there's a very real chance he doesn't play. So yes, I for non-late swap cash, yes, I would not play James Harden. I think it's a very, very bad idea. You can't take whatever you think the chances are, 40% chance of a 0. There's no way that maths out as the best cash play at that point. And again, there's Booker, there's Hield, there's Donovan Mitchell, there's Beal. There's any number of places in cash to spend up at shooting guard. So,
all right, DK cash. Would you go with Diallo or Kyle O'Quinn?
It's a good question. Cash, I'd go with Kyle O'Quinn. There's some chance you get billions of minutes out of Okafor and Randall, and you only get 19 minutes out of Diallo, and he ends up being a little worse. So for cash, I think you're seeding a little bit of upside there that Diallo has, but for cash, I'd probably run O'Quinn. For tournaments, if you have, I believe it's $100, slightly more inclined towards check yourself.
LeBron or Giannis in FanDuel cash?
LeBron in cash. Like, I think that game stays close. I think the other one quite possibly blows out. I think LeBron plays 36 to 40 minutes if it stays close. I think Giannis plays 28 to 33 minutes if it stays close. So, yeah, for all those reasons, I got to go that way.
Cash game, DraftKings, Tyler Johnson and Collins or Bazemore and Cousins?
I haven't projected almost identically. So I'll go slightly with the second one, Collins being the most frenetic of those options you're listing. So I think it's a little more likely he completely shats himself than Cousins. So I will slightly go with the second one.
All right. DK cash, Curry and Okafor or Paul George and Tyler Johnson. He already has Westbrook.
I'll still go Paul George and Tyler Johnson.
DK GPP, Okafor and Draymond or Collins and Tyler Johnson? Sorry, Thomas, I thought we did that one.
Collins and Tyler Johnson.
All right, let's see what we got over here. We've got, let's see, CP3 and no site, CP3 and Paul George or Curry and Durant. It's Ring Room. I'm guessing it's DK.
CP3 and Paul George.
All right, I need to ban this guy. Let's see. Dead J-Ball starting Sabonis or Bagley DK tournaments.
Sabonis.
Let's see. Now we've got
for tournaments, I would rank them currently. Right now, I would rank them Diallo, Rob, Taj. A couple power forwards on FanDuel. A couple people are throwing questions about that.
All right. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to ban this guy in YouTube, but they are.
Glad I'm not looking. I hate people who do that.
Yeah. We do have mods to block these. It's me. So there you go. Back over here, we've got J. Rich or Williams. Kenrich Williams. Are they even the same?
I'd probably J. Rich at this point with that starting lineup. It's a good question, but I will very slightly go to J. Rich there.
Okay. Sabonis or Bagley FanDuel tournaments?
Sabonis.
All right. LeBron and Conley or Paul George and CP3 FanDuel cash?
Paul George and CP3.
All right. That's there. Fantasy draft. So DraftKings scoring, but lock. This is cash. Diallo, Randall, and Wade. Or Bridges, I'm going to assume the starting Bridges, Kyle O'Quinn, and Kemba. I'd go with the first one. That's a lot of volatility for cash.
I'll go with the first one also.
Yeah.
It's close. There's some uncertainty in both of them, but for cash, I'd slightly go with the first one there, yeah.
All right. Let's see here. We've got... we did that one. I think that is going to do it. We're 30 seconds out from locks. So by the time you guys hear this, we are probably done. Any thoughts on a Bullock pivot away from Bazemore FanDuel?
A what pivot away? A Bullock pivot? I think it's $4,200. Bullock, especially on DK's fine. He's going to play his 30 minutes. The matchup is good. I actually should have mentioned him. I have some affection for him. Prefer Tyler Johnson. Prefer a couple guys, but Bullock absolutely fine to play.
Kemba or Kyrie DK tournaments?
Kemba.
Let's see. That is going to do it because we just hit a lock here. That means we are going to take a minute for America's favorite game that is sweeping the nation. Daddy likes. Oh, Harden out.
Yep.
Okay. To be mostly
expected. On the nose? Did they do that?
Yep, that seems like what they did. And I'm going off premium chat here, but they're not going to muck around here. So nothing cited, and I haven't. There it comes. Harden is out.
Yep. It's amusingly, I believe it hit at the Fantasy Labs tweet hit at literally 7:00 and 2 seconds. Nice job. We went 2 seconds late there. But.
All right. Well, you did have a good call on that for how to handle it on FanDuel. So that
I mean, you play Chris Paul at that point. Who?
Yeah.
I don't know what the ownership will be, but. Yeah, he's tremendous now at 8K. You need that game to stay close. Maybe only get you 40 or something, but if you're going to get 60 or something out of Chris Paul, this is the spot in which it happens. Ellington and Brown starting again for the Pistons.
All right, I'm downloading the file from the $15 400,000 fadeaway on DraftKings. This is 100K to first place.
$400,000, 100K to first place.
If you can't give 25% the first place amongst your friends, what are you doing? It's too late for me to see how many. God, that's probably, let's see, 100.
It should be a good game of Daddy Like. There's
5. It's 50% of that prize pool is going to the top 10. If you're not first, you're last.
I miss you doing this. We had taken again, for people who aren't familiar with your rapport with me, you ask me the questions. For everyone else, I just sort of go through it myself and talk about it. So this is fun for me. I get the game show type aspect here.
I know. This is kind of how it first started. Fanvice days, I think, is when we started doing this. So yeah. Who is the number one owned player on DraftKings 7:00 lock games? I believe there are 5 games that have locked.
There's going to be some popular dudes here. Because, all right. Yeah, there's going to be some really popular. We have several really good games starting, and then we have okay. So, I'm just going through the massively owned guys who are going to be at the top there because we have Sabonis and O'Quinn. Bazemore's game is going. The Pelicans game is going. So all the Suns and the Hawks.
Karl Anthony Towns is out, by the way.
Oh, yeah, they're really doing a great job at this 703 bullshit. Okay. Got that one right, though, too. It would just seem odd to not be like, what, the dude had a concussion. Let's just let him rest up, give him a full, basically what ends up being, 9 days off or whatever. Just let
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say Check Diallo.
Check Diallo is number 1. Would you like to hazard a guess?
I said 45 before, and not much has changed because everything got at 7.2. So I'll stick 45% on check.
43.5. Well done, sir. Well done. This is for me. Would you go with Zach or Ricky Rubio? I'm swapping out James Harden on draft, so those are my 2 choices.
Oh, just raw points?
Yeah.
I'll take Zach with me.
Yeah, it's not overly exciting.
In cash, I would take Rubio.
Well, draft is this is 8 man, so I only like the 8 mans. Who is number 2? They're from a different game. I'll give you that little.
Also, Bazemore.
It is not Bazemore. He is number 3. Sabonis is number 2. Would you like to do some percentage guesses there for Sabonis and Bazemore?
35 and 30.
Pretty good. 37.8 and 31.3. Nicely done.
Okay.
Let's see. We'll do the top 5. Number 4.
Kyle O'Quinn.
Absolutely. And number 5.
Yeah, here's where I'm a little dicey.
Exactly. You've narrowed it down to 3, and then you're going to cut it to 2, and then you're going to have to play Monty Hall. What's behind? Nobody knows Let's Make a Deal. Why am I even making that joke?
I think more people will go with George than LeBron. I'll say Trae Young.
He is number 6.
Right, then it has to be. Won't be that much Randall. Devin Booker.
Booker is number 7.
LeBron James.
LeBron James is number 5. What would you like to guess at his percentages?
Those should have come down a bit. So they'll all be, I think, north of 20, but I'll say we have James was 5.
James, Young, and Booker.
James, Young, Booker.
Yep.
28, 24, 21.
Pretty good. 26, 22, 18 for Booker, 18 for Oubre Jr., 17 for Randall. Bobby Portis gets the boost with the start. He is up to 12. Tyler Johnson at 10. Okafor at 9.5. Let's go down and see who.
Where's John Collins? So we can talk about that. He's one of the guys who I'm still 100% right on the year. I've had like 3 John Collins days, and including the monster 60 whatever he put up in. That wasn't Utah, but it was somewhere where we had like 3% on John Collins Day. I really liked him when he won the slate.
Do you want to guess?
Do I have a guess for Collins?
Yeah.
You won't get to 10. People are funny. 8.
8.4.
Yeah.
All right, let's get down here. Ed Davis, Alan Crabb, 1.4. Dellavedova, I'm assuming, is healthy.
Who's my Ingram?
Let me see. Ingram at 6. Kuzma's got to be. Well, Kuzma's not higher than that.
I would think Kuzma would be higher.
Sorry, Kuzma at 7.8 and Ingram at 6.
Okay. Kuzma less than 6 would have been shocking you, but still, those numbers, those are both really good. It's gonna be just another really high scoring slate.
Oh.
Like just looking around that 6K range, you're gonna get 40 something out of Kuzma or Ingram or Portis, who you were just talking about, and just Sabonis is in that range, and like there's it's going to be another 350 DK 400 FanDuel kind of day.
All right, we have Jaren Jackson Jr. 0.08. We have Eton Moore 0.05. Congratulations, you played yourself. That's not a ton, and I'm just trying. Is Kid Gilchrist playing these days? Let's see. Yeah, everybody else looks like they're playing. There's some scrubby players, but they are playing. So, is Tyreek playing? I know he had an MRI, and then we thought he was out, and then he was back in.
Yeah, he is going to play. He is available.
Shabazz Napier?
Shabazz in the rotation, not to any relevant extent, but he's in the rotation. He will play his 16 minutes.
All right, so that'll do it. You got to like a JaVale McGee at 1.5%, Eddie.
I do like that. Like there is a real upside there. I think it's 60% chance he plays like 20 to 22 minutes, and that isn't going to happen. But they're running a little big there. Randall starting helps him out a little bit. Worried about that big defense, so I like that at 1.5%.
All right.
So a couple other questions coming. Is there anything pending? Because I want to help and shit if there's.
No.
I got a notification, so that means they were on YouTube. They were premium Slack, and we're live.
With the Harden news, would you pivot from Bogdanovich to Eric Gordon, DK?
I'd strongly think about it. Definitely if I don't have Chris Paul. I'll put it that way. I still am going to prefer Bogdanovich a little bit, just sort of raw points, but I'm fairly ambivalent on that.
All right, we got 22 minutes to make this change. With Karl Anthony Towns out, would you swap away from Kelly Olynyk to Taj Gibson?
Yep.
Let's see.
I would.
Oh, Dave was listening to the show 3 minutes behind where we were live. No wonder things felt weird.
The worst. Again, if you're listening on almost any mechanism, you have the ability to increase the playback speed if you're watching on YouTube. So if I'm watching a YouTube something that is live and I want to catch up, you can drag it back to whatever point you got in, or start. Like if you're watching this show and it's a 90-minute show and you couldn't get on the show until 80 minutes out or something, until 40 minutes after the hour, 10 minutes after we started, you can set the play speed to 1.25% and it will catch up and then slow down to real time. So do that.
That is a good tip that I was unaware of.
Yeah, YouTube has that. It may be, I have YouTube Red and Premium and all that bullshit. It could be a factor of that. I don't think it is. There's on mobile, there's a little 3-dot thing. On desktop, there's a gear. You click on it, there's something that says playback time. And just like podcasts that Most people listen to it 1.5 speed or something. You can crank the speed up.
All right. Let's see. Here's a question of the Golden State, Houston, Milwaukee, Minnesota game. If you were going to collect your players into one of those, which would you go more guys from? There's a 2-game slate on DraftKings for those last two.
I mean, in a 2-game slate, I would not have a super strong preference because of the nature of that. But Golden State and Houston, if I'm picking between those two.
All right, and then
just less deep lineups, harden out. So I mean, you're dealing with the chance that the other game stays closer, but that doesn't seem any more likely. So yeah, I'd be a little more inclined towards the former.
All right, and then this one will send us off. Is Jaylen Brown a good shooting guard today? He's had a decent history against his opponent. Reminder, Hayward is available.
Not really at his price. Brown's price is up a little bit. You have Kyrie and Hayward back in. So both the usage and the minutes are somewhat imperiled. On a late slate, I think he's fine in tournaments. On early slate or something, he would come in well after, for me, Waiters, Bogdanovich, someone else we were just talking about. So there's a number of other shooting guards in that area I would rather play for his price or even a little bit less. But he's not like the craziest tournament play. So, I mean, he'd be, if I was ranking, shooting guards from 4,400 to 5,400, he would be like my number 5. He's not out of play, so I wouldn't feel terrible if I had him, but there's guys I would prefer to him in one lineup.
All right, with
Tyler Johnson's shooting guard eligible, so again, he's locked now.
All right, with that, we're going to get on out of here. Reminder, you do have to wait around for Luka Doncic news. That is the late slate game, so plan accordingly. If you got a lot of salary riding on it on DraftKings, make sure he's in your guard spot so you can maneuver over there to Donovan Mitchell. Otherwise, you're going to need a 2v2, but stay tuned for that. And then we have 3 games tomorrow. I believe they are at, what are they at? Like 3, 6, and 7 or something like that. We will have some sort of show. But subscribe, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button on YouTube so you know when we go live. But of course, follow Osmo_COM to get the live tweets when the shows go off. With that, we want to say thank you to Fast Eddie Fear. I want to say thank you to Osmo. We've had a lot of fun tonight, so thanks to Osmo.com. And with that, gamers, good luck.